Just welcome everybody. Okay, we are now at our 12th meetup, Porto.Vue meetup. And just start, just to let you know that Porto.Vue is a common effort, okay, to create a community around people who love or have an interest to work with VueJS. And our main purpose is to share knowledge, challenges, and also experiences. We are making these meetups every month, okay, with different hosts, locations, and speakers. I think we are gonna skip August because vacations, and but we'll resume on September. Now we are trying to make one meetup local, in person, and one remote. So try to attend all, and we are here waiting for you. We still are looking for speakers, okay? When it comes to September, we will communicate in our social media, but feel free to talk to us if you want to challenge you and talk a little bit about what you know, what you like about Vue. We'll welcome you. Just to know to get in touch with us, we have Meetup, Twitter, Slack, and email. So don't worry, talk to us. And to start, we have Bruno Francisco, co-founder and Codotto, talking to us a little bit about using composition API with TypeScript to build better forms. And later on, Samuel, our front-end developer at Infraspeak, that will talk about Vue and WebSockets. And I give the floor to Bruno. Bruno, good luck, and you can share your screen now.
Thank you. Yeah, let's see here, put the second screen. Okay, and let's put this one here on the side. And have here so I can have a little timer. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so hi guys, my name is Bruno. I am one of the co-founders at Codotto. Before I start my presentation, I would like to just say that unfortunately Portugal is going through really hard times right now. So if you happen to be lucky to afford to give back to firefighters or any organization that is helping what's going on in Portugal right now, I highly recommend for you guys to do so. From small food, from rice to water to Coke, anything that you guys would like to give, feel free. So yeah, basically today I am here to talk using composition API with TypeScript. Let's make this full screen. Using composition API with TypeScript to build better forms. And as I said, my name is Bruno Francisco. I'm a wannabe front-end developer. I work at Codotto. Originally, I'm from Brazil, but I work in Croatia. And if you would like to know more about me, you can follow the link here. The presentation is going to be shared after as well. And a little bit about Codotto. Our motto is create and organize IT meetups with ease. We're trying to make Porto.Vue to join us. So basically, we give the opportunity to IT meetups to be organized in a much better way than meetups.com, and also to give real-time communication so that you can organize meetups in your own local area, and a bunch of other cool features that you feel free to check it out. So in this presentation today, we're going to be talking about 9 points. It is very important to note that all of we're going to be talking about today, it's render functions. You're not going to be using render functions in your entire app. There are certain cases where you are going to be using, but in this very specific case, you guys are going to see that we are going to be using mostly render functions. We're going to talk a little bit what is composition API, creating our first composables, and in the end, not everything is a silver bullet. We're going to say the advantages and disadvantages of this method. So first of all, what are render functions? How Vue turns your template into a virtual DOM. In VueJS documentation website, functions, render functions are defined as functions that return virtual DOM trees. And in the chart that it's from VueJS documentation website as well, what happens when you write a template, it gets compiled into a render function code. Something else happened that it's not important for us right now. it returns a virtual DOM tree. And then whenever you update anything on the DOM, this virtual DOM tree is mounted and patched to the actual DOM on your browser. So when you actually write this, a template, a div, for example, with an h1 tag inside of it, what Vue does under the hood to transform this into a render function is this. It simply creates a node, an object of node div with an h1 inside. I'm actually kidding. This is not actually what it's being done. Vue actually does this. So under the hood, Vue does a lot of improvements to your code to make your templates much faster and much more optimized. So what is Composition API? When it was released, it was called the first class reactivity APIs. A second class APIs, it was basically the options API. You could not import directly a ref, a computed, and so on. So with Composition API, Vue gives you more power to implement that in your code. So by VueJS definition is, again, Composition API is a set of APIs that allow us to alter Vue components, use imported functions instead of declaring options. And on the left side, we have the old way of doing things, an options API. And on the right side, we have Composition API. And you can see from each one of these colors, it represents a concern in your code. We can talk about here business logic, we can talk about templates, computed properties, and so on and so on. And on the left side, you can see on the options API, it's that the same logic is it's all over the place in the same file. And on the right side, on the Composition API, what you actually do have is everything is grouped together. So no need for the developer to be searching through the file to follow the path of your business logic. So what are the advantages of Composition API? Better logic reuse, everything is in the same place, and also you can respect dry and solid principles as well. Smaller production bundle and less overhead, more flexible code organization, and for me, the most important one, better typing inference. So what are composables? How we can group our logic into reusable pieces of code? Let's take a look. First by VueJS definitions. In the context of Vue applications, a composable is nothing more than a function that leverages the Vue Composition API to encapsulate and reuse stateful logic. Stateful logic is very important here. And let's look at the first one, a very simple composable. We have our user counter here, composable, and inside of it, we're going to have the stateful logic, which is the counter. We have the business logic that defines how an increment counter should look like. And then we return or we expose these both entities to our code or to the client. And it's very important to say that this is not a composable. And why? We do not have a stateful logic here. We just have two very simple, or maybe it could even be complex helper functions that is just that, helper functions. You could extract this into a helper file that it wouldn't need its own scope. So let's create our first composable, how we can abstract reusable logic into composables. So let's take a look at a bad code, let's say like this, where we would like to track the position of the mouse in a certain page or even inside a certain component. What we do here is we have on the landing page doing exactly the same thing. So we set the mouse position to X and Y. We define the function to update every time that the mouse moves around. And on mounted and on unmounted, we're going to register this event listener and then remove the event listener. And on the register page, exactly the same thing. Nothing changes. The business logic is the same. Everything is the same. So what if we could move the logic of tracking the mouse into a composable? It's going to be on a single place where we can reuse this logic in all of our application. So basically, we can create a composable. In this case, usually we create them in source composables folders. And in this case, we're going to use a use mouse. And this example is the same one that VueJS has in their documentation as well. we encapsulate the states of X and Y. Luckily, we are not handling here 3D. And we have the update function that, again, tracks whenever a mouse is moving around. And on mounted and on unmounted event listeners and remove event listeners. And we expose those managed states and to our client code. So now if we want to use this same exact piece of code, it's basically, first of all, one line for us. The logic is in the same place. If you want to change how you track a mouse, for example, you can. And it's much simpler to use, and it's much more, it tells the developer exactly what he's trying to do. So what are the best practices for composables? Well, the first one is start composables with use. If you start a composable with use mouse or use create form, you're going to know, and your developers will know it right away, that this does a very specific job. And the second one is use unwrap to unwrap your arguments when passed to composables. The third one is return refs instead of reactive, and that is because using an object will cause the object to lose reactivity when destructured. And the last one is for the guys who actually have to handle with SSR or deal with SSR, is use unmounted hooks to perform operations on the DOM to make sure that the DOM is there when you're trying to access the DOM. So why abstract forms into composables in Codotto? Why we took the decision of abstracting these forms into a composable, which many people would say that it's an anti-pattern. Well, let's look at this image here. On the left side, we have, they are two completely different components. On the left side, we have a component that it's an inline form when a user signs in. And on the right side, we have a component that is a multi-step form. Exactly same business logic, exactly same fields, attributes, business logic in terms of how many characters the first, the last name can have, and a country, and so on. So basically, which things does these forms have in common? Exactly the same fields as I said before. The nodes of each form must have all accessibility attributes, labels, name, autocompletes, and so on. Both forms can be used in several places in our application, but the layout might change. You might allow a user to register in a Meetup page, and then later on the register page itself. And both forms have exactly the same business logic. So why not abstract that? So the first thought that we had is create two components. That's the first approach. And let's take a look at how this code would actually turn out if we took that decision. The first component, it would be the inline form component. We would create the user and also several inputs that would basically be the representation of the design. The second one, it's a multi-step form. In this case, we have a step, a user, and on the first step, we have the first name and the last name. On the second step, we would have the rest of the fields. Well, if we look at both of these components, there's one problem. All of the fields here, they are exactly the same. If a new developer comes and you have to register a new component that is about signing a user in a completely different part of the application, this new developer needs to come into this component to actually understand all of the fields that he needs, and also looking at the design, of course. And he might lose one business logic or another one that we might have missed on our PR. So should we create, for this problem in specific, should we create a component per input? It seems a bit overkill. Can we use slots or high order components in some way? In this case, it really doesn't fit in this scenario. So the last option that we found was to explore creating composables to hold our form. And we did just that. We created, for example, in this case here, it's an interface of a user, very simple, just to give an example. And we create a composable called useCreateUserForm. As a parameter, we're going to receive a ref or a reference to this user. And inside of it, we're going to have our fields. And it's very important to note here that we are saying that this fields object should have all of the keys of the user. So we should have first name, last name, country, and city, and it should return a vnode or a function that returns a vnode. And we would, on this fields object, we would have all of the fields of our user create object, and we expose these fields into our client code. So right now, let's just use our component or composable in the previous example. In this case of the inline form, we went from, I think it was 45 lines to maybe 20 or 15 here. And we use the create user form composable. We pass the user to it, and then we get the fields back, or we destructure the fields. And then instead of writing down all of the fields by hand, we simply call the fields with first name, last name, country, and city. And once again, in the second step, exactly the same thing. We are reusing this composable with the first name, last name, country, and city. Now, both of components are using the same fields, but in completely different ways in layouts. It could be a grid, a multi-step form, an inline form from top to bottom, and so on. But the business logic, it's always going to be on the same place. So the most important part right now is imagine that you have a backend API and a user needs to have a city or a name, or even let's add sex of the user. It can be a male or female. So if you actually do that, TypeScript will tell us right away in our example before that, in this case, I'm going to add here sex, for example. As soon as I add this, this user could be in another file, in a codex file. The TypeScript is going to tell me that sex is missing here, and we need to add this field here. And you can imagine this throughout your entire application. So what things here can we optimize? The first thing is the anonymous functions that we were using before. Whenever Vue re-renders, he will have to redeclare those anonymous functions. So we can extract those anonymous functions into functions inside of the form itself to make things performance a little bit better. And the second one is about the business logic as well. We're using Quasar here, and we have a queue input that accepts rules and how this input should be valid or invalid. And in this case, I say that it should be a string, and it should have a max of 255. Again, if your backend guy says that it's not 255 more characters anymore, it should be 100. You only have to change this in one place. So how abstracting forms into composable have helped us at Codotto? Well, the first one is we're able to create simple forms faster. A new developer comes, he doesn't need to go into other components or even miss a business logic, because everything regarding that form of signing in, creating a user, or even a meetup, it's going to be at the same place. Our business logic for certain forms are in a single place. We are able to represent the same form, fields, in multiple ways, grids, inlines, multi-step. You can reuse the same form in completely different parts of the application. And the most important one is we maintain consistency in the way that fields are handled. And not everything is a silver bullet. Everything has a trade-off, of course, and this kind of things should be used with care. And what are the advantages and disadvantages in these forms in composables in this way? The advantages, most of them overlap with what I already spoke about, is form creations are faster, components are much smaller since forms are stored in a composable. It gives back a good development experience. You get a lot of auto-completion out of the box. Abstract the complexity that sometimes comes with certain forms. And the most important one for us, business logic stays in a centralized place for the form, respecting the dry principle. And the disadvantages of this method is not suitable for big forms. If you have a form that you have 10 fields, 20 fields, and a very complex business logic, I guarantee you that this is not the method for it. We have suffered with this, and we switched into a store into a state management kind of form. And the complex business logic composables can get pretty big, and Vue teams, a core team, recommend that your composable should be simple, should do something small, and should be something small but very, very good. And the last ones, the third one is mixing concerns. A lot of people would argue that this is an anti-pattern, mixing UI and business logic, which in a lot of cases it is. But in this case, we thought that it's giving more benefits to us to break this rule than to respect it. And the last one is passing records by reference. When you pass a user to the composable as arguments, it can get really tricky, and you have to be very disciplined not to pass this composable into another composable and then into another composable, because it is possible to do it, but then it leads to the same problems that prop drilling kind of brought us, not with events, but for you to keep tracking where things are starting, what's happening, and where it's happening. So with that, all of that, guys, thank you very much. I really hope that you guys enjoyed listening to me for 19 minutes. And if there are any questions, I'll be gladly answering them. Thank you.
Thank us, Bruno. It was really nice, and I really learned something. Composable was not a matter that I already take time to study, so it was really good. Let's see if anyone has questions. But I want to ask right off the bat. It's just more of a curiosity. Why render functions instead of template for Codotto? Because it's not the first time I encounter render functions, but I really encountered the appeal that it has render functions instead of templates. Seeing your presentation, I could understand, but just being used to see templates every day, I want to know what led you to choose render functions instead.
Yeah, that's a question that we kind of get a lot. And I'm gonna say I'm gonna go more into advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah.
The clear advantages is that when you truly need the power of JavaScript, and when you start to get more used to using JavaScript and alongside with TypeScript, you truly need that type inference that TypeScript is going to give you. And a lot of times extensions in VS Code and also PHP Storm in the IDEs, they kind of lose those type inference when going into template. But with render functions, since everything is in TypeScript, our code base is, I think, 95% of TypeScript. We get, if I change something on the backend and I change my codex in the front end, I will know right away which files do I need to modify, and if this business logic change, where do I need to fix these mistakes? I mean, not mistakes, but where do I have to fix those cases? The disadvantages, though, is that a lot of tooling that is developed today, it is based on templates. So ES-linked rules that apply for templates, we do not have them, so we have to be more careful with that. And the next one is that new developers that get introduced to the code base, they are kind of like, even senior ones, they do not have a very good grasp of render functions and what you can actually do with it. So it is a learning curve in the beginning when you get introduced to code base like this.
Okay, nice. But just to finish, I read that Vue 3 might help us with TypeScript, the inference and the typings in the template. Yep. It's something that are you thinking of, or you're gonna stay in the render functions?
Oh, currently in Codotto, we're already using Vue 3. We switched. We took the time to fix the technical debt. And we still found that a lot of times we are losing the type inference that we wanted to have. Yeah. That's why we still chose the role of render functions.
Okay, nice. Doesn't seem that anyone has any questions. I once again thank you, Bruno. It was really nice to have you here, and I think I can pass the word to Samuel.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day, guys. Thank you.
Bye, Bruno.
Okay, thank you, Bruno. Can you guys hear me okay? Is it okay?
Yeah, yeah, Samuel. Yeah.
Let me just share my screen. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, yeah. We are seeing.
Okay, let's begin. 2:40 in Brazil, of course. So, hi everyone, I'm Samuel. I'm a front-end developer at Infraspeak. I'm from Brazil, currently remotely working from Brazil. And please don't mind me if I'm standing, okay? It helps me speak a little better, okay? So we'll be talking about VueJS and WebSockets. So let's go. So first of all, what's WebSocket? Okay, WebSocket is a protocol for client-server bidirectional communication. Okay, so for client-server communication, you might be thinking of HTTP mainly, but it's a little different from HTTP because WebSockets establish a keep alive connection between server and client. So basically, after you establish a connection, both of them can freely communicate with each other, and that connection is only closed when one of the parties dies or voluntarily closes the connection. Okay, so I have some comparison between HTTP and WebSockets. Basically, for HTTP, the client has to make a request to the server, and then the server responds to that request. Okay, it can't happen the other way around because the server can't actually request something to the client. Okay, so it always begins with the client. Okay. Now for WebSockets, it's a little different. First of all, the client makes an HTTP handshake to the server, and then the server, if it accepts the connection with the client, then it will respond with a 101 status code, which means, okay, you can switch protocols, we can upgrade to WebSockets, and then after that, we have a duplex persistent connection in which the client can send events to the server, and then the server at any time can send events to the client too. And the connection is closed whenever one of them dies or voluntarily closes it. Okay. And where would you use WebSockets? Well, basically any application requiring some bidirectional real-time communication. Like I think the simplest example is like web chats. Let's say you are chatting with a friend of yours and you expect them to receive your message as soon as you hit enter, okay? And you also expect to receive their message at real time. And that's a very nice example of where you could use sockets for that. And it's also very used among games, online games, browser games. Like I have an example here, Agar.io. This game was like a little hit a while ago. Basically players would be in a white room and they were colorful balls and they have to chase other players and capture them. And it was a mass of players and everything was connected by WebSockets in the backend. Okay, this is an example from games. And another very nice example is Figma. Figma is a prototyping tool for UI designers to prototype UIs, and it's very nice because once you enter a document, you can see people's cursors and the changes they are making to the document, and it's all real time. They really use WebSockets in the backend. Okay, so these are some very simple and nice examples. And why would you use WebSockets along Vue.js? Well, first of all, Vue is awesome. I think everyone fix that, or you wouldn't be listening to me, okay? I think. But Vue can basically easily listen to events, user inputs, emit events, react to data changes, everything. But it's still just a client-side JavaScript framework. And depending on what you're trying to build, using HTTP-based communications might not be enough for you. I mean, I have a little example here. Let's say you're trying to build a screen with a dashboard, and that dashboard receives lots of data from the backend, and you want that to be real time. Okay, so it updates in real time. But the problem is that the server can't reach out to you all the time. You have to make a request to the server.
Oh, never
Sorry.
mind.
Okay. You can't. The server can't make a request to the client. The client has to make a request to the server, and then the server responds with the data. Okay. You can make that work with HTTP, and I have some examples, some workarounds for that here, but they're not really the best. Okay. The first you can use is polling. It's very common. Polling is basically you make a small loop in your application. It can be like a while true, and every time you loop you make this loop, you make a request to the server, like every 10-20 seconds, for example. You make a request to the server, you get the data from the server, and then you update your dashboard. Okay. But you have to do that all the time because you're trying to refresh your dashboard and bring new information all the time. So every 5, 10, 20 seconds, you name it, you're polling the server. You're polling the server, over requesting the server for that info. Let's say you have 100 users trying to do the same thing, and you're over requesting because most of these requests will be useless. Many times there might not be any update for you. Okay, you're over requesting for nothing, and it's also very delayed because if you bring new information now, you will have new information only 20 seconds in the future when you poll again. Okay, this is polling, and you can also try long polling too. It's more on the server side. Okay, but basically long poly is like you make a request to the server and you're saying, okay, server, I need some info from you, and I know you don't have it for now, but please keep the connection open. Please hold my request, and when you have updates for me, please send me a response. So let's say you make a request to the server then sends another request to other server, and it's only supposed to respond to you when the other server responds back to it. So there's lots of dependencies that need to be that need to happen before you can have a response. Okay, and so that's basically long polling. It might give you an idea of real time, but the problem is that it requires too many running threads on the server, because let's say you have 50 users trying to do the same thing, and the server will it will hold 50 requests at the same time for like 2-3 minutes. You can get to that, and it's a lot of computational power. Okay, and also these requests can time out at some time, which is a big issue. That's why in these cases it's actually nice to use WebSockets. Okay, so I prepared a little project so I can practically show you in my browser. So I made a small tic-tac-toe multiplayer game. I think most of you have played this. Basically, it's 2 players. One player is X, one player is O. And you have to make a line with your symbol, like a line of X, or a row of X's, or maybe a diagonal. Okay, and then you win the game. I guess you all know that. But I established some simple principles of the game we're building here. So players, whenever they enter the application, they can set a username and inform a game name, a room name to the server. So basically, if a room doesn't exist yet by the name, okay, we will create a room and then set the player to that room. Or if the room exists, we'll basically connect the two users so they can play. Okay. There's also an issue with the player numbers. So if I have only one player, the player can play alone. And if I have two players, no other player can join. I can have two players, three players. Okay. Also, the game will keep a little scoreboard, and it runs indefinitely until one of the clients go away, closes the connection. Okay. And to achieve that, we will use Vuex on the client side for state management, a library called VueSocket.io for connecting our Vue to the server. It is a very nice library. It integrates socket to Vue, and it also supports Vuex. Okay, and for the server, we'll be using a Flask Socket IO server. It's Python, and it has room making capabilities, which means we can create rooms where two players can communicate with each other, can play the game. Okay. Just before going to the application itself, I'm just gonna simply explain the communication basics for the server behavior. Okay. So whenever a user enters the application, it's gonna send to the server a connect event, and then if all goes well, the server is gonna send back the connect event to the clients to say that okay, you're connected now. So we establish a keep alive connection between client and server, and after that, I can join a room. I can set a nickname for me and inform a room name, and then that the client will send an event to the server called join room, and then the server, if all goes well, will send back an event called user join to the entire room. So let's say I'm already at the room, I'm waiting for another player, and when the other player enters, the server is gonna send the event back to both of us, so I can know that the other player entered the room. Okay, so everyone gets updated. So after both players have joined the room, I can like play the game. I can just choose a square to leave my X or my O, and that triggers an event to the server called choose square, and then the server sends back the event update room to the entire room, and that way both players will be updated to the server to the room state. Okay. This is just some code. I'm gonna show the application to you. So in order to simulate everything, I'm just gonna open another browser. I hope you can all see both browsers. I have Brave and Firefox here. This is running on my local host, okay? And now I have my two players here. This is gonna be Sam. Sam is gonna create a room called my room, okay? Oh, here I've joined the room. I'm alone, okay? So I'm waiting for other player. I can't do anything for now. And the other player is gonna be other. And I have to pass the same room name here because I want to join that player that's already playing, okay? So my room, okay, I'm in the room, everyone's connected. Sam has entered before, so it's his turn, it's the X, and he can play because it's his turn, so let's leave an X here. And the other player, it's the other player's turn. Sam can't play anymore because it's the other player's turn. Okay, so let's just play and kind of win this very easily. Okay, so Sam wins. This is my score. Sam won, other 0. Another can continue playing. It's his turn. Now Sam. Let's just win this for other. Okay, so 101. Okay, and this is very simple. Okay, as you can see, everything that I do here, if I choose a square, the event goes back to the server, and then the server sends back the information for both of the players. So it's real time, and it's it's very nice to keep everyone updated. Okay, I'm just gonna go back to the presentation, and now I'm just gonna show you some simple code for setting up the connection, sending and receiving events. So first of all, I'm going to set the connection on the entry point for the project. It's main.js. I'm using JavaScript here just to keep it very simple, okay? But basically, in main.js, I'm going to import my libraries. Then I set the address for the server. This is just localhost for me. And then here I'm going to set an action prefix. This is very nice because it allows VueSocket.io to communicate with our Vuex, our actions inside Vuex. So whenever an event is received from the server, VueSocket.io will look for any actions starting with onSocket event underline and then the event name. Okay, and if it's found, then basically VueSocket.io will call that event, that action automatically. And let's say you have an action that calls a mutation that then changes your state. Then basically you just receive data from the server and then everything is updated. It's very beautiful. Okay. So to send an event to the server, this has to be done component level. Okay, so this is GameView, my GameView, one of my components, and it has a method that receives an index when the server, when the client receives a click from the user. I get the index from the board, and then I basically make some checks here just to see if it's valid. Okay, so basically I have to see the square is empty, and if I have an opponent, and if it's my turn. If so, then basically I'm just gonna send the event to the server using $socket.emit. This string here is the event that the server is waiting for. And basically this is my data. I'm just going to be passing the index that I clicked, a row name, and the user that is me. It's myself. Okay, so basically the server will receive that. And then to listen to events from the server, it's a lot easy too. I just go to the index of my star. I have some actions, some actions for receiving the event from the VueSocket.io. So basically, this is the prefix that we set down there, and on socket.io event .user join. User join is the event that the server sent to me. Okay, it sends me some data. So basically, if it's a success, I'm just gonna commit this data to my Vuex, and everything will be updated on the DOM. Okay, and that's basically it. Thank you so much, everyone, and it's Q&A time.
Yeah, I have a question, if it's possible. Yeah.
Okay.
So let me. Yeah. So like how can we manage authorization? Let's imagine that you have a game with user A and user B. How can I prevent user C from entering the game as well and publishing to that channel?
Okay. I have a small authorization system. It's very basic. It actually depends on your backend. Okay. I'm just gonna show you, but basically I have a server here, and it has a very secret key. Okay, this is just a very simple authorization method that I made for this simple project. Okay, but when I receive the connect event, I just get the value that I received from the client. Okay, the client has the secret key in the name var. Okay, and I'm just very basically verifying this. Okay, but this is my case for a very simple project. But for bigger projects like FlexSocket.io itself, this is for Python. you might use some ready libraries for that, because this is Flask after all, and Flask has lots of libraries that you can just plug and play and make your authentication, okay? But it's gonna depend on what you're trying to do, okay? And then the client can send a username and a password, and then you will receive a JWT. It can happen, okay? I'm not sure if I was very clear.
Yeah, very clear. I would like to make another
it's
one.
more on the server
Maybe,
side, yeah.
I'd like to make another question, but maybe if someone has a question as well, I'll give time to them first.
I don't think that the chat is very shy today, so you can go ahead. You can go ahead. Yeah. Sorry, we're not listening. Yeah. Now it's good.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you mind going back to the last slide that you were before the last one? Yes,
Yep.
this one. Yeah. So like in HTTPs and like the normal HTTP requests that we have, you can always like check the response code. 200 it's okay, 400 bad request, and so on and so on. Is in terms of WebSockets, is there a way to check when you send some data and then you receive back, or do you need to do something like you did right now here, like manually insert the status in the response?
Yeah, I manually inserted a status because I thought it would be easier for me to read on the front end side, because you can have WebSockets doesn't have the same codes like HTTP, like 200, 404. It's a little different the way that you handle the response. But basically, what happens most of the time is that if something bad happens at the server, it's going to just give you an error. Okay. I prevented that. I wanted to be able to receive a success or an error string. I thought it was going to be a little better. Okay. But you don't really have access to 200s, 400s, 500s. It's a bit different.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
I have one question, Samuel. You were explaining that with normal HTTP we have polling and long polling, and I took this tic-tac-toe example, and I thought to myself, it was this type of games of user turns is not a good way to use long polling. This because if I understand correctly, our WebSockets are always listening to the server, waiting for a response.
Yes.
And since this is a turn-based, couldn't we optimize our game making I'm user one, I make a play, I make a request, and I know that of course the user two won't have infinite time to play, and wouldn't it be better to make a request and wait for the user response, server response, because we know a priori that it won't take too long, right? Because it's a turn-based game, and we can time out because it only takes we make the turns to
long polling.
Yeah. We can't, okay, since it's tic-tac-toe, we can say you have 10 seconds to play, and we can use long polling knowing that all requests won't last longer than 10 seconds, because if he won't play, he would miss his turn. Won't be a good way to use long polling instead of WebSockets in that case, if we are restraining that.
Yes, it would work, sure, particularly for a very small application. However, there are the problems that I spoke before. If you have like thousands of players. Let's say this is a hit game. Everyone wants to play this, and
Yeah.
if you have too many requests to the server is like, wow, let's build 1,000 threads to hold the requests for the players, and this is very
Okay.
yeah, this sucks. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, understand. Yeah.
That's why we use WebSockets, because whenever I have a change from the server just sends me the response. Okay, and that's exactly what I need. So long polling would get a lot of computational power for that to happen. That's the thing.
Okay, nice. I think that we don't have any more question. I think you have. Okay. José Cabral is saying that this specific scenario could also cause DDoS attack pretty easily. Yeah.
Well.
Sorry. José Cabral just said that this specific scenario that we are talking about could also cause a DDoS attack pretty easily.
This is just a comment, because if we have this game exposed, and we, as Samuel said, if we have multiple connections at the same time, at some point our server will be out of resources if we have several threads pending from responses. So it's just not scalable. It works, but on a smaller scale.
Yeah, particularly for long polling. I think WebSockets, you could use some authentication, so not everyone can authenticate and makes these requests. But yeah, you're right.
Okay, let's go. If someone has any questions, and you have time to, if you want to have one question also for Bruno presentation, okay, you can ask it. If not, you can contact the speakers or Porto.Vue via social media. And I think we can wrap it up. Okay. Thanks again for the speaker. Thanks again for everyone that is watching at home. Once again, if you are willing to talk about Vue, talk to us, and we can arrange some to talk to the next Porto.Vue meetup. And follow us on our social media, okay? Twitter, Slack, LinkedIn, and I hope you enjoyed it.